Live. Here we are live. How you doing? How you doing? Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Monday, the 13th. 13th. Interesting day. Interesting day. We've got banks. Oh, I've done it again. I'm right off. We've got banks dropping like flies. Isn't this interesting? If you've got any cash, go and get it out of the bank. Just a little tip. Just a pragmatic thing to do. Have cash on hand. 11 people are here. Typical. Somebody has just come to my front door and my guest hasn't turned up. So I'm just going to go and check who this is. I'll be back in a second. Sorry about that. Oh, God. I had to answer the door. It was a big delivery. And if I hadn't answered it would have been a nightmare. My guest still hasn't turned up. Sorry to keep you waiting. It's Monday morning. What can I tell you? I've been running around like a blue-ass fly, as my nan would say. School runs and all of that. Who's here? Let's have a look. Hi, Lisa Cry Freedom. How you doing? Hi, Tanya Chambers. You're on here more than me. Renee Middleton, knock knock. It was a ding dong, actually. Ding dong. Rosemary Legasik. Nice name. Patricia Heaslip. Funny. What would you like to talk about? I don't know, Judy. I have a brilliant guest coming on called Edward Fitzgerald, who's a polymath. Do you know what that word means? Go and look it up quickly. It's a good word if you don't. Monique. Hello, Monique. Shine unites Monday night here in Australia. Yeah. God, I keep trying to hook up with what's his name in Australia, and I keep missing him. Jamil Nawaz. Good morning from an unsurprisingly rainy and grey Lancashire, England. Yeah, well, 4,000 holes in Blackburn, Lancashire. Lancashire. I used to live in Lancashire. Did rain there a lot. It's raining here all morning. Rain yesterday. Your shows are so realistic. Yes. Would an AI go and answer the front door? No. Oh, my guest has arrived. Hello for the Isle of Wight, Blackburn. Oh, you are in Blackburn. See? Psychic. Totally psychic. Lubbock, Texas. Edward, were you at the Lubbock show that I did? Edward, were you there? I loved Lubbock, Texas. That was possibly that was definitely top 3 of the American tour. Audrey, west of Ireland. Yes. Well, I'm in the west of Ireland, Audrey. So welcome. Yes, right. I'm going to get Edward. He's in the room, so I'm going to bring him in. Sorry to drop this on you, Edward. We've never met, and I've just decided to go live at the last minute and then send you a link to something you probably never used before.
That was the other thing. The email was delayed, so I didn't get the link until last minute.
Well, I was running around going, oh, I bet he's one of those guys. If he thinks this 1 minute late, he's probably going to go, I'm never working with this guy again. So I got it just on 11 o'clock.
No, that's fine.
Well, it's really good to meet you. I've gone live because I've got such a busy day that I haven't got time to download, upload, and do all of those things. So we've got to keep it YouTube friendly, which means don't mention words like this, if that's all right with you.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, I was reading your bio, and thanks to Jackie White for introducing us. I was reading your bio, and I was like, wow, I like this guy. I mean, you've had a phenomenal career. And I just described you as a polymath to everybody because you describe yourself as that, and I like that. I use that word a lot myself because you had a 30-year consulting career. Just I'll recap. Tell me if I'm wrong, if I miss anything. You love yacht racing. You had a big accident. They told you that your brain was never. You were going to grieve over the loss of your memory. That was 12 years ago. So it
will be in June. Yeah.
So you retrained yourself. You rebuilt yourself like the Bionic Man. Wrote an amazing book. Got to meet your heroes and work with Jack Canfield and what's the other guy's name? I've forgotten it.
Brian Tracy.
Brian Tracy. Yeah. So I've read all their books. I haven't read your book yet.
They were. I would class them as my mentors. Not that they physically were my mentors, but just by studying their work and reading their books and consuming their material, they are mentoring you in that respect. So. I'm very grateful for the fact that the opportunities arose that I could actually work with them. And actually, believe it or not, and I mentioned it when I spoke to Jackie, those came about as a part of a meditation manifestation that I was doing. Because that was after the brain injury. I found meditation again, and that was one of the paths to my sort of full recovery. And those just came out of the blue. And one, as you probably know, one thing leads to another. Just opportunities. I almost turned. I was flattered by the offer to co-write a book with Brian Tracy, and then, but didn't feel worthy enough.
I know what you mean. Imposter syndrome.
Yeah. And then when I was offered the opportunity to produce or to co-produce his life story, I also turned that down.
Yeah, I heard you did that. Why did you do that then?
My youngest son was due at the same time. Well, he was due late August, and we were supposed to be doing the principal filming in San Diego, late July, early August. And I've got 3 sons, and
hi.
Yeah. And the older 2 had all been born early, like a month early, 2 weeks early. And obviously, youngest son, Henry, wasn't any exception. Literally, as I'm transiting through New York, I pick up a text message saying, I'm in labor. My only reply was, breathe deeply and hang on. It didn't come for another 3 days after that. But,
I'd have done this. I'm off to the pub. See you later.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I should have turned that off. That was very remiss of me not to turn my mobile off.
Don't worry, it's not a professional show. You're okay. But I just had to go and answer the door and leave the viewers hanging for 3 minutes.
I've just locked the dogs out so that they don't interrupt. They'll probably be banging at the door in a minute.
So, this book, Smoke and Mirrors.
Yes. Yeah.
How did that come about? When did you write it? What's it about?
Literally, only published at the 28th of Feb. It's been a rushed project. It wasn't the book that I intended to write. I mentioned Jack Canfield. I had done an interview with him, and at the end of the interview, he handed me his business card and said, I want your story in my next book. And I contacted his office, and it's been on one of those, and that was October of 2018. And then COVID hit and everything else. And I never never got round to doing it. And I've got this constant reminder, write the book for Jack. So I finally sat down April, May of last year, and I thought, right, okay, well, the book has kind of matured in my brain now. I actually want to include a philosophy that I've developed, which is called the maximum impact philosophy. But I'll come on to that another time. But the short version is I started to write the book that I've procrastinated over the last 3-4 years. And this one came, I ended up writing this one. I never intended to write this book. What it was, I'd been, over the last few years, I've been writing legal notices. I'm not a lawyer. So that's the other thing, I don't identify as a polymath. But I'm not a lawyer. I've got a history of having to deal with laws in various countries, 80 different countries or more. But I'm not a trained lawyer. I'm not a member of any guild or bar association or all that. Just well read, like yourself. And I was presented with a problem. How do we stop the schools bill in the UK? Because the ideologies that were being promoted in that were just horrendous. Even if you homeschool one child that has a what they call an EHCP, which is like a education and health care plan. If they're trying to label your kid as difficult, they'll slap that order on there because they want more funding within the school. And basically you'd have to register as a school and have all the oversight that a school would have with a local authority.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the process of writing that, I came across this sort of constitutional mechanism called petition of right, where it's the true process of, if you've got a grievance, you can petition without any retribution the king and Parliament. Not like what we have now, where you can email, send an email in onto the petition list for Parliament, get 100,000 signatures on that electronic petition, and they might,
then they just ignore it anyway.
And they ignore it. They give you the last 5 minutes of a session, and it gets kicked out.
Yep.
So that was the main driver, really, for writing the book, was because I'd written this petition, this affidavit, this statement of plain facts, and I then realised that I needed to give people the evidence that showed the evidence, so they could audit the 47 statements that are in this petition. And one thing I've tried not to read any conventional, orthodox or secular books on the Constitution, because I wanted all the research to be original. And that's sort of taken me to Kew, which is the National Archives in Kew. That I've handled most of the original coronation oaths and all the other documents that go with them. I've even been in their invigilating room where they take the documents out of the safe. And it's been extremely revealing, to say the least. I've also ended up going down the rabbit holes of Irish antiquity, which, funnily enough, a lot of things keep coming up. So I've watched a few of your shows, and
it keeps popping up.
Pharaohs, ancient Ogham language. And there's just a narrative that's been pushed. This isn't just a couple of, decades. This is hundreds of years, if not millennia.
Yeah.
So I ended up trying to prove the points that there was like using the education argument, that the rights of a mother and father, or if you're a guardian to someone, to a child, we have always had that innate right to choose how we educate those children. Our children, whether it's tutors, private tutors, homeschooling, mentoring, and so that sent me back. And so chapter 3 of the book is a chronology, and it goes from the first indigenous peoples on these islands, on this archipelago, which we call British Isles, from 700,000 years ago. from fossil records all the way through to the present day, establishing so that Caesar in his extracts on his account of the Gallic Wars, he talks about the Druids and the Druids in Ireland. And the Celts. Obviously, there was a cross pollination of peoples across France and Brittany, and the entire British Isles, where it's recognised that they would school, and some of those young men and women would elect to stay in school for 20 years. Much the same as we would do in a modern university. And obviously everything was oral by tradition. It was, it was not recounted in the written form. Everything was by memory. And it's like anything, the more, I'm very interested in the brain, having recovered from a traumatic brain injury. The brain's capacity is unbounded and unlimited. It's only what conditions are placed on us, both ourselves and by others, that stop our capacity of learning and holding knowledge. So it's been an interesting quest in terms of writing the book, but ultimately what I've attempted to set out is try to set the history straight, in terms of where the Constitution came from, where trial by jury, the concept of trial by jury, originated, and how the use of language throughout history has been to turn and invert everything that we thought we knew or we've been taught about both the monarch and our law systems are completely inverted, to the point that the natural order of things, natural law, men and women, the monarch is the first among equals. They're given the remit by the people to protect our inalienable rights, those absolute natural rights that we're born with that can't be taken away. The right to build shelter, to grow food, have access to natural resources, to sustain life, and lots of other things that have come along the way in terms of freedom of speech. These are things that are inherent, that can't be taken away. And unfortunately, the use of language has meant that we are fooled into thinking that we are powerless, that we actually sit at the bottom of the chain. So, monarch, parliament, appointment of ministers, and then we're down the food chain here. And there's this reliance on laws, as it were, when effectively they've been subverted, and they are subverting our rights. So the big message from the book is about the true rights that we have, and it's not what we've been told. It's about trying to empower people to actually understand and not keep giving, that we are sovereigns, that we don't keep giving our power away to the powers that try to be. So the book isn't really just a book. It's a call to action, and the book is really there to educate and for people to understand, to satisfy themselves, so that they can then use the affidavit that I've written and submit that to the king, to basically call him out, that his views are repugnant to his duties and obligations under the Constitution.
I like that sentence.
Yeah. And they are. I mean, he's made. I'm not. How do I put it? I'm not a person that doesn't love the environment. I do. Prince Charles, when he was Prince Charles, held a lot of views that around being very green in terms of how we treat and respect. This is my maximum impact philosophy is about having balance, but no one element should take precedent over another. So you shouldn't have everything just to protect the environment at the detriment of the people.
It's been a very long-term plan, I think.
Yeah.
Having him talk to plants in greenhouses in the 70s was part of this picture that they've been painting for a very, very long time.
Yeah,
I think.
There's been a lot of things that I've unearthed, to the fact that the coronation oaths since 1714 are. You got the price up there. So the price is to reflect the Constitution of 1215. But if people enter it's plastered everywhere. If you enter the promo code of petition, it will reduce it to £2.22.
So the Constitution, you're talking about the Magna Carta?
Yes, Magna Carta.
Yeah,
it's still in force today. They've tried to re-educate everyone that we don't have. It's a mixture of different laws, and unfortunately, we can't really have a constitution that can be repealed and amended. So when they took Magna Carta, which was from 1215, they republished it. Successive kings after King John, they tried to water it down, and or tried to water down the obligations on their obligations, as it were.
Yeah.
And then when modern parliament wasn't formed until 1264, 1265, and then in 1297 they placed Magna Carta, or the 1225 version of Magna Carta, on the statute book. Guess how many of those 61 articles are still remaining that haven't been repealed?
No idea.
3.
Whoa. Doesn't surprise me.
They then produced the Bill of Rights in 1689 after the Glorious Revolution, which is based upon is an amendment of the offer, as it were, to William and Mary, Queen William and Mary, which is the Declaration of Rights. And again, I've got a big question mark. I can't prove it, but there was supposed to have been a convention. So after they kicked out James II in 1688, they offered the crown to William and Mary, William of Orange, who was the Dutch prince. And they were supposed to have had a convention because Parliament couldn't exist without the king, because it's a part of the royal prerogative. The king's prerogative is to create a mechanism so that he can manage the day-to-day, procedures of administering the kingdom. And so in 1688 they couldn't hold a parliament. So they supposedly had a number of people go around the various, what they call the 5 ports and all the shires, to appoint a convention. So basically a smaller parliament of elected officials. When I spoke with one of the researchers at Kew, who was his specific area of expertise is this period, I said,
where's Kew? You said Kew a couple of times. Where is
so
that?
Kew? It's where Kew Gardens are. They've got So they've got KEW. Yeah,
It's just weird because I did a show on Kew last night, but
right,
as in the 17th letter.
Oh yes, I saw that.
So I was like, hang on, what's going on here?
Not in the God sense.
Just want to clarify that. Okay.
So in I don't know, it's classed as Middlesex, but it's sort of part of Greater London now, on the Thames. And this sort of leading researcher for this period he said he couldn't find any documents that would support that they had elections and appointed these people. So I can't prove it that it existed. It didn't exist, and this is part of the dichotomy of it's like some of the coronation oaths. They used a wax seal for the to seal the documents, to prove on a braid, to prove that the document was authentic and everything else. So King George III's seal is completely shattered and it's been repaired. It's so you don't really know that the integrity of that document is sound. It hasn't been replaced at some point. Most of these are very important documents, whilst they're maintained by the National Archives. Some of them were just shoved, multiples were shoved in boxes that were too small for them, really. It was only Queen Elizabeth's coronation oath that and the Declaration of Rights that were actually in the safe room when I went to be able to access them. But there's so much because obviously this doesn't have just relevance for the current construct of the way that we have divided up this British Isles, by political means. This has what I've written and what I've reflected in the book has relevance to all Commonwealth nations. It has relevance to all but one of the United States of America.
Well, I should say so because they never. I should say so because the Crown has been running the states for the last 300 years behind the scenes, haven't they?
Well, this is it, and they're based upon their state laws, based on common law, English common law. So one of the things that I found, it's like when you open that can of worms that you don't know what you'll find. Yeah. So edition 1 of the book, I feel like I've only really scratched the surface.
Yeah.
Of it all, and exposed so much already. There was some people that were knowledgeable in the Constitution that I was introduced to. As soon as I asked some very deep, pointed questions, zero communications back. Literally nothing.
You're saying that what do we call these people? Gatekeepers.
Quite possibly. They'll talk about so much in the public domain, and then as soon as you ask pointed questions, I cut you.
Well, if you were going to defraud the whole world for hundreds, if not thousands of years, you would install gatekeepers. I learned this about the legal system over the last years in business, court cases coming out my ears.
Yeah.
Also other court cases in other areas where I saw how they would appear to be doing something and then they just dismantle it. And I was like, and God showed me this so that I would understand this for this time, because I never fully understood how the Illuminati, or whatever you want to call it, the cabal, could pull it off. But when you ring fence everything and you have agents in place, it's quite easy, isn't it? Yeah. So what I'm saying is that it sounds like that you came across a brick wall there.
Yeah. So my sphere of, because that was the other thing. So having 3 small, youngish sons, 2 teenagers and a 6-year-old, I was concerned about what I was unearthing, and I foolishly thought I was ready. I'd uncovered enough in September, and then obviously they announced the death of Queen Elizabeth, and up until that point, I was going to use a pseudonym. I wasn't going to use my own name, and but then obviously I had to look. Obviously they announced that, and then was the whole accession of a new king, and I've had to look. So I've had to reopen a lot of what I'd originally researched, and had to dig deeper. And but in so doing, in being sort of standing in my power and saying, right, okay, I'm going to put my name to this. I've now written my own affidavit, and it's included in the book. It's notarized, so it can be used. And it's already been used in Canada, actually. Literally 12 hours after the book arrived on a guy's desk, it's been put on the public record in Canada in a case against a judge as evidence. And the thing is, I've gone from having gone from the decision of saying, right, okay, I'm going to put my name to this. Mm-hmm. I've just got more bold.
Yeah, that happens.
Like, from where I was in September to now where I'm going, oh my God, I'm now giving interviews.
Well, no, courage begats courage.
Yeah.
Because that's what it is. And I think it's critical. I've been saying the same thing on this channel for nearly 3 years, you know, we are protected spiritually at this time, and it's time to stand up and use your voice and not be afraid of the consequences, because we're in a life or death situation as a race at the moment. So what have we got to lose? And I applaud your courage to do that, because that's exactly what we need. And that's why I wanted to, because I never do shows in the morning. I squeezed you in.
No, I know.
I don't normally have time in the mornings, but I thought this was such an important piece of work, and I trust Jackie implicitly. So you know, I'm really pleased to share
Michelle. I've also Michelle Fieldings. I know that you've done some interviews with her. I'm on her show on the 5th of April, I think.
Brilliant. I just had a message off her, because she's been trying to send me a video for 3 days, and it won't get here, because we made a show last week, a really good one.
Yeah,
she can't get it to me. Michelle, come on. she's pulling her hair out because she's trying everything. Anyway, yeah, Michelle's brilliant.
But you saying about the spirit, so this has also been a spiritual journey for me.
Yeah.
A lot of there's certain elements of luck when you're trying to find pieces of information, passages. So every book,
the
synchronicity of it, and I would say I'm divinely guided.
You are,
because there's been passages that I needed. All right, okay, I need to prove this point. Where is it? And you know, I'm guide. You know, I pick up a 400-page, but most of the books I've had to pick up are 400 pages, 600 pages.
I know nobody would want to do this, because these books are so dense, aren't they?
And I'm led to the exact passage that I need to, and I'm like, but time and time again, each time.
Brilliant.
There was another one. So when I was trying to, when I was diving deep into Irish history and trying to understand the whole mess that we've got from the 1100s, you know, 1152, 1155 papal bull Laudabilita, which is basically a fake, which gave, you know, supposedly King Henry II permission to have lordship over. It was, you know, granted by the Pope.
I'm finding loads of stuff out, like the Battle of Boyne was not a battle. It was a ritual to pass power over to the King of England. I mean, it's just crackers, you know.
Yeah.
The deeper you go, the less you know.
Well, this is the thing. There's all, but I know you're in Ireland, and and obviously my ancestry's, you know, my father's side is from Cork area, but there seems to have been certain periods where there's a narrative, and it's just supported each time. So I've even gone into sort of looking at archaeological evidence of things. So like the language Ogham, which is the ancient language of the Gaels, if you believe the modern narrative, it only came about after around about mid 450 to 500 AD, after Saint Patrick came and brought Christianity and everything else. But I've got record, you know, I found records which said that, you know, nothing was written down, or that's the narrative. Nothing was written down in Ireland until around.
The Bible was written in Irish.
Exactly. So you know, and for me, some of the revelations when you look at Ogham. So for those that don't, you know, your viewers that aren't familiar with Ogham, it's spelled Ogham, and it was a very rudimentary language, which was essentially based upon the hand. You know, vertical lines with 5 lines across, and that formed an alphabet.
Yeah, I was actually, what was it? I was watching something yesterday. It was talking about this exactly. I'm going to show the viewers a picture of what it looks like. If you just give me
but there's this narrative. So there was even an Ogham stone found in an old Roman disused, you know, sort of barracks or whatever in Silchester in England, and the archaeological, we think, you know, it was around 450 AD, because the organic material that was found, the pottery that was found underneath the stone, dates from that period. And I'm like, well, anybody with, you know, that's not academic would know that, well, that stone doesn't prove when that only proves when that stone was thrown in this disused well, not when the stone was created.
Careful, careful. You're going to be doing critical thinking next.
Oh, well, this is it. But this is part of what I've tried to convey in the book is for people to realize that, the first fossil records of man, or in the early indigenous people in the British Isles, was 700,000 years ago. And they're trying to convey the fact that, civilization's only really been around the last 3,000 years.
I know.
4,000 years.
It's hilarious, really.
So if there's where's the equivalent of flint axes and spearheads in Egypt? If that was an evolved race, what happened before?
They found a battery that was 80,000 years old in Iraq.
Yeah.
The Guardian newspaper called Graham Hancock's recent series on Netflix the most dangerous thing on television, because he doesn't go far enough for me either. But this is all coming into the consciousness. So is what I'm trying to get at.
So you just brought something up, actually, because I'd noticed that people had been hitting the website to download the book, but then not clicking through. It's like, bounce rate of about 62% or something. And I thought, there's something technical wrong, or it's something to do with me, or whatever. But I've used the pyramid symbol.
You should get me to help you in the future.
I know. That's why I mention it. The pyramid symbol, and a lot of the people automatically associate pyramid with
bad,
all-seeing eye, with bad.
But that's what they've done, because there's nothing wrong with the all-seeing eye. The all-seeing eye is God, and pyramids are good.
Yeah. But for me, again, if anyone that's followed Graham Hancock and that sort of series and that sort of that line of antiquity, the amount of science and mathematical and astronomical data that's held in the Great Pyramid in Pisa, is, pi, for God's sake, is in there. That
how interesting that you
we've
said
got
pi.
To realize.
How interesting that you said pi.
Yeah.
This is all about you guys watching. This is another book you should get. You've got to get Edward's book. I put a link in the chat and it's on the screen. I just bought it, but this is a great book because this is talking about all the. Anyway, sorry, Edward, carry on.
No. But as I said, without going down too many rabbit holes, I think it's just trying to show to people, that's part of the book is, and again, Smoke and Mirrors was a joke title for me, because I thought if I'm going to write a fictional novel or make a documentary of this, at some point I might call it Smoke and Mirrors, and the working title was very long. It's the subtitle, which is a compendium to your undoubted and inalienable rights, which doesn't really trip off the tongue very well.
I'm the king of long titles. This is called Adventures in the Cosmic Suit. It's the longest title show on YouTube.
So, so Smoke and Mirrors is really the it's the antithesis of what's being played to us, not just in our own lifetimes or our parents or our grandparents. This goes back, hundreds and thousands of years, and it's no surprise that people have become overwhelmed and say, conspiracy or whatever. So what I've tried to do in the book, and that's what comes with the book. I spent a lot of time uploading and archiving a lot of the research material. So the reason why it's only a sort of an ebook at the moment is because there's a myriad of hyperlinks to the original resources.
Yeah.
So if people want to fill their boots, want to prove what I've said, I've gone straight to the page that says, right, Sir William Blackstone, here he is. This is him talking about it in 1753. And I've done the same with a number of other materials of it's the origins of the Ogham language, actually. Dr. Reverend Malcolm, he, back in mid 1600s, wrote a book and a series of essays, actually, where he pulls together ancient Gaelic, and ties it to Native American, language and the similarity of different dialects, you know, throughout sort of Caledonia and China and all this, and showing that Ogham and the ancient Gaelic is potentially the root language. So I think the reason why I mention it is because that's not accepted. That's not a mainstream view.
No.
There's been I don't know what's been going on with Ireland, but there's a lot of suppression over history around the Bible, the pyramids, everything with related to Ireland. They've been very, you know, everything's been twisted and turned, but language has been their tool all along. So throughout this, if you can get your head around the fact that language is the way that the mechanism that they've used to invert most of what we've understood from history and how it would normally have been passed from generation to generation. So, for instance, the original trial by jury, which were 12 true men, you know, that acted as the judges to hear both the facts of a claim against someone and to judge the rules or the laws or whatever. Are they just? Are they unjust? Do they infringe upon that person's inalienable rights? You know, in which case they're struck out. And that was the mechanism to remove unconstitutional or unjust laws off the statute book. And that's been twisted, and we now only have a jury trial where the judge makes the final decision, not the jury. So, you know, there's ultimately there's three ways to hold rogue and oppressive government and in antiquity, you know, monarchs to account. And one is to stop new laws being passed, which is called royal assent. So you require both the House of Lords and Commons and a signature from the monarch to pass a new law. And the monarch's role was the counterbalance. It was the safety mechanism that said, well, sorry, that those infringe people's rights, or they subvert, or they're prejudicial, and you're not supposed to pass any laws that are prejudicial to people's rights. And that was supposed to be the balance mechanism. The last monarch to physically sign a statute to give royal assent, was Queen Victoria. Since then they've used what they call Queen's cousins to give royal assent, and that extended throughout the Commonwealth. So in Canada and Australia and New Zealand, they still have today governor generals that apply the royal seal to any statute. So it doesn't matter what formation of their republic or whatever it is, they still have, you know, upper house, lower house. They still require the monarch's seal.
I gave a talk in the governor of British Columbia's house when I was 18. It was the worst talk I ever gave. It was awful. I mean, I'm just going to butt in a little bit.
No, fine.
Wasn't the Magna Carta created to get John into check? It was, you know, rogue monarchy.
Yeah. You know, like the Disney movie of, you know, Robin Hood would have you told, you know, King John was bad, and he'd broken his coronation oath, he'd broken the law, and what are termed as the barons, but going back through sort of epidemiology, you get to the root of what a baron is. It's the protector or the elder, and they essentially rebelled at sword point and held him to account. You know, a lot of people have said, but he only signed Magna Carta at knife point, you know, or at the tip of a sword. Well, quite possibly, you know, he had broken the law, and everything that's written in there is written from this perspective of how the monarch should behave and what rights there are. So Article 61, which was never, the original Magna Carta never had article numbers. It was just one flow of document. And in later editions, they've sort of broken it down so you can refer to certain texts. Article 61 is when there's a transgression by the monarch or Parliament or whatever. That was actually invoked in 2001, 23rd of March 2001, and the texting, the reason why I've written the book, and that's why I say everywhere, love, not revolution, is because I want peaceful resolution to this. Because what Article 61 allows the people to rise up, bear arms, seize the castles and the lands of the crown, sparing only the king, the queen, and their children, until such point that they've rectified and gone back to a point where we've got proper rule of law. And it's amazing that we've got 22 years and nobody's, I wasn't aware of it.
Who invoked it?
So initially 4 barons, so they were members of the Lords. So there was original 25 barons that were signatories to the what's called the Charter of Runnymede 1215. And the process is that those 25 are renewed throughout history, so it passes from father to son, and it only requires 4 of them to make a petition to the crown, to the monarch. At that time it was Queen Elizabeth II in January of 2001, and they were concerned. So it gives them, so it prescribes 40 days. The monarch or their appointed minister has 40 days in which to respond. On the 39th, they were concerned that the then Prime Minister Tony Blair was going to sign the Treaty of Nice, which it was the final push, as it were, to relinquish the complete sovereignty of the nation, because you're then influenced by an external. It's against the constitution to allow foreign bodies or potentates, prelates, to have an influence. And much the same as in America, they shouldn't have external influence.
Mm-hmm.
And
China.
Yeah. And so on the 39th day, the Queen's private secretary came back to them and said, I'm monitoring the situation and I'm being advised by my ministers. So on the 23rd of March 2001, they invoked Article 61. And what it says in there, if you don't stand up and overtly say, I'm under the barons for Article 61.
The page has been removed off the Telegraph.
Well, that's why I've archived it.
Great.
So from the book, I found this over the last 3 years. References that you've grabbed, and even in published documents, on the government's website, when it was related to this bits and pieces, they would replace the document. It wouldn't be up. It wouldn't have a new issue number or revision or a date or whatever. Just the text would be eradicated, just be removed. So I've learned, and that's what's taken me the time to capture all the information. And in the book, I've got the original source. And in case the original source is not there, it goes to the Internet Archive. And I've got all of the screen grabs and documents.
Yeah, I'm just going to show. I teach people this in my course as well, how to use it, because it's such a useful thing. If you guys watching ever find something missing, just go to archive.org and then put in the URL, and then you'll see the saved pages.
Yeah. So quite often it doesn't capture any sort of downloadable documents or footage or whatever. So
naughty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But obviously it's quite topical, because we have got what effectively is a constitutional crisis at this moment.
Yes, we do. That's why I wanted to get you on, because this is really important. And I've done a number of shows about natural law and common law and reclaiming your straw man and all that kind of thing. But there is a kind of there is a feeling at the moment where we the people go, well, what do we do next? How do we get rid of these guys? Because they just keep barking at us and they're telling us what to do.
Yeah. So this was, I'm very much solutions orientated. So this is, I've done the heavy lifting for people. They obviously, it's an affidavit that's witnessed by a commissioner for oaths. So
Yeah,
it
let's
has
explain that. Let's explain that
weight.
in English language, because
Yeah. So
what is an
so
affidavit? Why can people? What do people
so
got to do?
you could just write to the king as a letter
Yeah.
and state, I'm not happy, which people have done in the past. The reason for doing it as an affidavit, so that which basically is just a plain statement of facts. It's your truth. It has legal weight, lawful weight, in the respect that it has to be. So an affidavit in commerce, if it's not, stands as the truth unless it's rebutted point for point. This is written in a format such that, and I make no apologies for the fact that it's got the original Latin in there as well as the English translation. It's using the same vernacular that was used from a historical context. That's why I've written the book, and chapter 2 walks you through what each of these pieces mean. So, the under the Bible, and there's lots of Bible quotes in here because I'm trying to call them out on a spiritual level as well as a lawful constitutional level. So statement 3 there, you're just starting to go through. That's listing all of the inalienable rights. And what I've done is for the individual, when they sign it, this also becomes their truth. It becomes a stake in the ground. So this gives them the opportunity, because they've probably never done it ever before, to state what their rights are.
And this isn't limited to people who live in the UK, is it?
No, what I am doing is I am writing versions for Australia, Canada, and New Zealand, primarily because I've got contextual references for laws that are being, as examples that are being passed, the ideologies that are contained within them that are repugnant both to our rights, but also to the Constitution, because they're infringing or delaying upon our rights. Some that have already been given royal assent, and there's some that are still in draft. But the point is, I wrote it in a way that doesn't give them any wriggle room. They can't just say, okay, we've changed the name of that, or we've removed that offensive bit of line of text, but we replaced it with something else. They shouldn't be passing any laws that are prejudicial to the people, period. The primary number one obligation upon the monarch is to protect the rights of the people, period. No other reason. And because of the royal prerogative, the appointment of opening and closing of Parliament, it's all given off as though this is all pomp and ceremony. It's just, this is the ceremonial bit. So
no, it's not, is it? No,
it's not. It's masquerading as that. It isn't. What I've tried to show in the book is that what we put down as, the pomp and the ceremony of opening and closing of Parliament, of the coronation, this isn't just entertainment. This has relevance. And I think, if people could understand that, it just gives so much more weight to perhaps what they may have thought. So some people might have thought, I thought that, or I'm now giving them the evidence, the hard evidence, the factual aspects to say, look, this is where it said. And it wasn't just said by Edward Fitzgerald, because I'm nobody, really. I'm not a legal scholar. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just somebody that's done the research, joined the dots. I've been divinely guided to find the information. So the people that I've quoted in the book are the same people that are quoted by our the judiciary when they talk about the Constitution. So Edward Coke, spelt Coke, C-O-K-E, but it's pronounced Cook. He was the various levels of he was an MP, he was a barrister, he was Lord Chief Justice under both Queen Elizabeth I and James I. Big advocate on common law. and also Sir William Blackstone, who was a professor in professor of law in Cambridge and Oxford. And again, his commentaries on the English law are the Bible. They're the go-to for judges, Supreme Court judges, the law lords, when they're talking about the Constitution. But I've also given references and citations. So one of the rebuttals in this affidavit, so this is the point of making an affidavit, it's coming back to that point, is you've got you're not just your own autograph on it, you've got two witnesses, which under the Bible, so a man can't be committed to death unless there's by only one witness. There has to be two or more. And the commissioner for oaths is the statutory process of getting a solicitor. It only costs £5 in the UK to get to get a high street solicitor to witness the signature. But it has lawful standing. So if something should happen to you in the future, you've got it on legal record as well as lawful record that you've made this statement of truth. And there is, I've already written the covering letter that goes with it. And again, people
it's all in the book. So you just want people.
It's all in the book, but within the book, there's a link that goes out to a separate PDF that people can download, fill in their name, and it populates throughout the document. And the process for printing it off, getting it witnessed, and then there's a shipping document that goes. So 2 copies go to you. Hold the original because that's the value. Because if you need it in future, something happens to you, you say, well, I've got this affidavit that that the next time we're in lockdown or whatever, and someone says, "Oh, we saw you walking out for longer than 5 minutes, and that was against the law." You can say, well, in beginning of 2023, my statement of truth said that Article 42 of Magna Carta says that I should have free movement.
Yeah, brilliant.
So I know it sounds kind of heavy, and I've tried to make the book as readable as possible, but I've just had this huge weight on my shoulders that I'm against the clock.
Yeah.
So it's not perfect. It's the first edition, but I needed to get the information out there. It's sufficient for people to be able to take action on it.
Success loves speed.
Yeah, and even for my timelines, I feel like I'm months behind where I should have been. But everything's divine timing. I know that
it is. So how many people need to do this for it to have an effect? Or is that a stupid question? Because well,
let's put it this way. So Article 61, which says it's been invoked since 2021. Since 2001, basically says there's been a transgression. There's been a treasonous act by Tony Blair. That hasn't been rectified. We're still that remains in perpetuity, regardless of who takes them, the monarchy next, whether it's Charles, William, or Auntie Flo. Doesn't matter. This is an opportunity for people to say, I'm on the side of I stand under Article 61, and I'm holding you to account because you're subverting my rights, or it's taken as your silence is acquiescent to the fact that you're on the side. The king will assume that you're on their side and you're supporting them, and that's the way that Article 61's been written. And so that's why it's important for people, for their own sovereignty, for their own sense of being and conscience, to do it. This isn't some gimmick to try and get people to buy or download the book. That's not the purpose of the book. If I was to give it away, people wouldn't have any value to it.
No, I totally agree. I mean, one thing I've been doing is pay what you can afford. Yeah, because it's nobody should be excluded, and I mean, 222 is cheap as chips anyway. But it's a different way of doing business. You know, because some multimillionaires watch these shows, and people who are on the breadline watch these shows, so nobody should be excluded.
No, so that was the reason why I was, you know, I wanted to sell it for £1, and I was convinced that, you know, by the time all the fees and everything else come off that, you know, whether it was £2.22 or £1, it really didn't make much difference. That's still less than the price of a cup of coffee.
Exactly.
You know, for the value of what I'm sharing, and
I just found this while I was looking for articles.
was that full fact?
Full facts, full bullshit. Article doesn't allow you to ignore COVID-19 regulations. F off. I love it. I love it.
So the fact checking isn't. So it's interesting you bring that up. So the fact checking isn't a recent invention. In my quest to find the truth, I've used my intuition a lot. Even in mid to late 1800s, there was the Irish government did an official translation of the Senchus Mór, which was the law tracts, the old Brachan law, or Fenacta as it was originally called, and the two main scholars that were translating it died before it was published, so somebody else took over. And the foreword to it and the whole preface it changes the emphasis of the rest of the manuscripts that have been translated, and talk about from a Christian perspective and from the trying to drive the narrative that these ancient documents only really got written down after St. Patrick came in mid 1450s or whatever it was. Sorry, 450s, 453, 458. And that didn't sit right with me. I'm like, well, I've got an official translation of these ancient laws, which shows that they were those, for those that don't know, these are based on natural law principles, not common law. Common law wasn't foisted upon the Irish, and only in a small area surrounding Dublin until sort of late 1100s. But I was led to find somebody that was basically commentating on these official documents at the time, in the same time period. And there's a chap called Sir Henry Sumner Maine. He was a Regis professor and very well regarded in Victorian period, and basically called out am I allowed to say bullshit?
Can say anything you want on this,
the bullshit at the time, and basically said this doesn't sit with the rest of the translations and everything else. This narrative that's been added on the official documents, the official translations from that period. So this whole fact checking thing has been it's not a modern invention,
no,
at all. And what I've done is people might turn around and go, oh, you just cherry picked certain narratives. Well, that's what they've done.
Yeah.
When they quote Sir Edward Cook or Sir William Blackstone in they're cherry picking certain bits to fulfill a narrative, but without telling the much wider, the whole picture.
Yeah.
So I've had to pick through and disregard certain sections of certain text, not just completely write them off, because they have been tainted, they've twisted, or tried to overlay a different sense of meaning, or part of a narrative that doesn't really exist, that just doesn't add up and make sense. But people can audit. I mean, I'm quite happy to update the book if someone genuinely comes to me and says, right, okay, I've got consistency in a different narrative or whatever. I'm not about trying to push a particular narrative, but I'm just showing what I've exposed so far, which is consistent. So,
well,
because
sorry, go on.
If we don't, so I was just going to say, if we don't follow this peaceful, lawful route, then people will take up pitchforks and what have you, and that's what they want ultimately in this conflict, is for people to be so riled that they're being kettled into 15-minute cities and what have you, that they take it into their own become mob rule and vigilantes, and that's what that's what they've done all along. It's divide and conquer.
Well, it'll just be Jack Palance in that movie. Pick up the gun.
Yeah,
I don't want to pick up the gun, mister.
Yeah. Actually, my sister tried to do what was it? Was it Good Men? I'm trying to think of the story now, where Jack Nicholson is the lawyer in the Navy, and he said, "You can't handle the truth." So my sister was doing this impression the other day when I was trying to sort of explain some of the stuff, and perhaps for some people that might be the case. They physically cannot take on board, especially the level of deception and lies that have been told to us.
Oh, the last 3 years has proven that beyond a shadow of a doubt. They actually doubled down with the lies. It's extraordinary.
Yeah. And you see, the United Nations doing public, press conferences saying that, we need to crack down, and we need to use the search engine technologies to ensure that our narrative, our truth, is at the top of everyone's search patterns.
It's been like that for a long time.
Well, yeah.
But when I was doing this for a job, I was lecturing 2009, I think it was, and I stood up in front of a crowd of entrepreneurs and I said, "You can't trust Google," and they gasped. They went, "What? You can't say that." I said, "You idiots have been giving them all your data. They own everything now because of you lot." Yeah. And nobody understood it.
Yeah.
Apart from one guy at the back, he was making $60,000 a day from his kitchen because he didn't trust Google. He knew. But yeah, I think it's amazing that you've written this book, and I'm really pleased to meet you. And if I can promote it in any way, I will. You guys watching this, please go and have a look at it. I think it's what have I been saying for the last 3 years? It's time to claim our sovereignty on every level. And if in terms of there's a lot of Americans, Australians, and New Zealanders watching this, it's still worth them reading it.
Absolutely, yeah. So obviously, the second edition I'm trying to write, and typically when I try to upload it to Amazon and Barnes and Noble, after I passed all their pre-checks, it then corrupted. So not surprisingly, so hence I hurriedly sort of revamped my website to host it there. Yeah. But yes, it is relevant because the core basis of the material is relevant. As I said, someone's already picked it up within 12 hours of seeing it, of it being published, and has used it as evidence in a case against a corrupt judge.
Fantastic.
So, they contacted me, and I used gave them my unredacted affidavit for them to use. So, it was my statement of truth that all the material that I've used, it's the original copies of the coronation oaths and other documents that I've
and Anne O'Loughlin, hello, Anne, I was about to ask the same question. What can we do in Ireland?
So that's how. So I do actually cover Ireland in the book. There's lots of open questions in the southern part of Ireland because they've still got Magna Carta, but it was called Magna Carta Hibernia 1216 that was placed. It was the 1215 version placed on the statute book in Ireland. That's still in place. So is the Act of Supremacy and everything else, which still claims the English monarch has Crown of Ireland, believe it or not.
No, I do. I know.
So I didn't want to do Ireland any disjustice. I've tried to cover it, but I recognise that I'm still unearthing and I'm still uncovering the true nature of what's going on in Ireland. Certainly, there's already movements in Ireland to resurrect the Dáil Éireann courts. Yeah, and there's been, and I in one of the appendix, I attended the first Dáil Éireann court in November of last year, which put the Papal Bull Laudabilita and the Crown of Ireland and the Act of Union of 1800 on trial.
There are some amazing people doing some amazing things here. I mean, I got a phone call 2 years ago from somebody in Dublin who said the Black Seal has been delivered to the president. The Black Seal means you know you're done, but they're still there.
Yeah. But because it's the illusion that's given, and unfortunately, until we get enough people, that's you were asking how many people do we need? If there was, there's a church network in the UK that's looking to get 100,000 of their parishioners. That's their drive to submit this petition, and the head of the church, their independent church, is going to go and seek an audience with the king to present the list of names and saying, look, I've got 100,000 of my parishioners that have submitted it. So, there isn't. This is as much about you putting a stake in the ground for yourself, claiming your rights, claiming your sovereignty, as it is about calling them out, as it is about making people aware that the eyes are on them of what they're doing, so that this time round for a coronation, people are aware of what the true process is. In the book, I've unearthed the fact that and it's even acknowledged by Sir Winston Churchill back in 1953-52, that the coronation oaths as administered to every sovereign since 1714 could be questioned.
There is a school of thought that says that he's actually the true father of Queen Elizabeth II, but I won't go down that rabbit hole.
Well, who knows? Who knows with the lineage of our monarchy? And obviously, if you go back far enough, they were kings of France, Ireland, England, Scotland, and Wales, all at the same time. So I've been asked, would I write something equivalent for Europe? That would have relevance. So part of this is about actually as community levels actually identifying and saying, okay, well, let's go back to the true nature of how we hold ourselves accountable. So that's the other thing, is a lot of people want the sovereignty thing. They want to claim their sovereignty. They want the freedom, but they're not prepared to take on the personal responsibility that comes with it.
Yeah.
And for me, I think that's that I've drawn that out in the book. There are certain members of our communities that just are not ready to hold themselves accountable and responsible. Because at the moment we've got a state system that has been geared up so that you rely upon them heavily for everything. You lean on them as a crutch to see, and unfortunately that's been failing. And it's gone the other way. We've got a rogue element that are now passing or pushing ideologies.
This is what this is what the public have been doing with the government.
Yeah,
and it's it's time to stop it. I think, guys watching this, go and get this book, share it with everybody you can think of. If there's any podcasters watching this with a big audience, get Edward on. And let's just get this out there. I just think it's a great contribution. Thank you, Edward. I'm going to have to go because I've got 3 shows to do today, and I'm getting hangry. And I'll be biting people's heads off on shows. I don't want to do that.
No.
But it's been a pleasure to meet you. And
thank you.
Well done. You're doing God's work. Brilliant.
It's I keep having to reminding myself that the pen is mightier than the sword, and just hold myself in check, really.
Keep going, because I'm sure this is going to be a magnus opus in its own right.
Yeah, and, thank you.
And all of these things from God are all part of the war, So it's this is another weapon, guys, that you can deploy peacefully and take responsibility for yourself. So thanks guys for watching. Thanks, Edward. I'm going to have to go. Great to see you. Thanks, Jackie.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. Have a lovely day. I'll see you again, I'm sure. We'll get an update. All right. Cheers, Edward. Bye.